Is a very exciting one tonight where we have the more guests than we've ever had before. In fact, we have limited out Restream. I didn't know there was a limit of 10. We had 12 guests. So what we're going to do is we're going to swap some out at 7:30. So now you got to stay for the whole thing. What can I say? We're going to talk about 2023 events, what we liked, what we didn't like. And then we're also going to talk about 2024, what events are coming up, what we hope to see in 2024 in terms of events, and just general discussing why events are good for MSPs and what types of events are good for MSPs. And what I really hope that people get out of this, number one, I hope MSPs get out of it just how they can make events effective for them and maybe which events they should be going to. And then second of all, vendors. We have a lot of vendors in this group. So I'm hoping that vendors take away some ideas of some of the things that they can do during their events. And while they're manning booths or whether they're hosting an event, it doesn't matter, that can make it better for the MSPs, for the community in general. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. And with me, I do have a lineup of some great guests tonight. But before we get to that, I do want to really quick just make sure that we are live streaming on all the different platforms as usual. So let me go ahead and do that. It looks like LinkedIn is working. Facebook. Let's double check. Yep, Facebook is working. And YouTube is working as well. Let me just mute that real quick. There we go. Okay. So we are streaming on everything. The one thing that I didn't quite get figured out in the Restream interface that we usually do inside of the eCam interface that we normally use for our live streams is the chat. So because we have guests, it'll give me a little bit of time to switch back and forth between the different platforms so that I can be checking some of those things. But if I miss a comment tonight, I apologize in advance just because we are doing it a little bit differently tonight. All right. Well, I think that's enough for me. Although, let's see, we do have one more guest coming in. So we have a total of 10. And then we will, like I said in the beginning, because we had 12 scheduled, we will go ahead and kind of swap some out at 7:30. Anyway, again, let's get this thing started. All right. Now, a lot of faces on here. Dylan, I will get that logo out of your face. There we go. That would be unkind just to leave the logo on top of Dylan's face. A lot of well-known faces on this show tonight and more to come, obviously. And so the first thing I want to do is just go around and have everybody introduce themselves. I think everybody is showing up the same on everybody's screen. This isn't like Zoom where it all gets jumbled up for everybody's screen. So starting with Joshua, we'll just start at the top and kind of go around till we get to Brian there at the bottom.
Hey everyone, Joshua Zuckerman. I own a small MSP here in Central Maine and look forward to discussing a little bit about events I went to last year and which ones this year I'm looking forward to. Thanks for the invite.
Henry Tim. I own a MSP in Northern Indiana. I'm on a couple different industry boards and also manage a community. But yeah, looking forward to discussing kind of what we've seen over the last year and how we can improve upon it.
Hey everybody, Dylan Hutchison, the head of channel over at Shield Cyber. Very excited about this panel here. I'm excited to share the experiences from the vendor side and how we can engage as a community.
Pete, why don't you go
Pete Bussum. Yeah, I'll just jump in there. Great to be here with you guys and chatting with you all about the industry events of last year and maybe what could be this year. Equilibrium Consulting marketing platform.
Hi everyone, I'm Carrie Green. I work with an MSP up here in just outside of Edmonton in Canada, and also one of the co-founders of Can IT Con. We had our first inaugural event this last year and looking forward to bringing our second event this year. So I'm excited to share and to learn from everybody else as well.
I muted myself on purpose. George Bardisi here. Definitely come from an MSP as well as a vendor, as well as an events guy, I guess. I do a little bit of everything, as well as eat a lot of pizza and some Eagles games in between. So love to talk about all topics therein. Go for it, guys.
Bob Coppage, owner, CEO, Simplex IT, small, medium MSP in Northeast Ohio. And normally I am George's hairdresser, and I apologize profusely for obviously falling asleep at the switch on my responsibilities. And I promise to do better.
My name is Paco LeBron. I run a MSP out of Chicago called Prodigy Techs, and also a co-founder of MSP Unplugged, which also hosts a online in-person event, and it'll be our 5th annual this year, actually, coming up in DC. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Awesome.
Brian Weiss from iTech Solutions out of San Luis Obispo. We've been doing this MSP thing since about 2005, and I've gone to plenty of events. I'm happy to share my experiences and help people get a better experience about said events that we're going to.
Awesome. And, obviously this group in general has been to lots of events. If you go to events, you see these faces and these names all over the place. But, we brought in MSPs. We brought in people who are very familiar with running events, like Carrie, like George, like Paco, who have been doing it for a very long time. And, I really wanted to get that depth of knowledge in this panel. And that's why we brought up vendors as well as MSPs, as well as making sure that we had people who were experienced in driving events. Now, I also want to say, because he's not here, he's probably one of the people who couldn't get in, and I hope that he can be on at 7:30, is that this entire discussion started in Ken Patterson's community call that happens every Thursday. So, I love giving shout outs to everybody, and there are lots of communities represented here. George has MSP Initiative. Paco, you've got the podcast and MSP Unplugged and all kinds of things. So a lot of these people are involved. Henry represents the tech degenerates. So there's just a lot of community, and there's a lot of different communities. And I just want to point out that there are so many, and each of them has their own special kind of feeling and purpose and draw. And I expect everybody to participate in all of the different communities, because I think there's something worthwhile in every single one of them. So with that start, I want to go around again, and this time Brian, so that he doesn't feel like he's always last. I want to know what your favorite event of 2023 was. Just quickly, let's go around and do that.
Hands down was the PAX 8 Beyond, mainly because of all the original content that they had. It made me wish I would have brought more of my team members to it.
I'll second that.
Agreed.
Yeah, I was going to say for Brian, yeah, I agree. I think it was my favorite, not only because of the educational content, but it was the first event that I could actually bring my team out. So it was their first real event outside of a local event to visit. And they had a blast. I mean, they came home with a bunch of information, and they had a lot of great entertainment. Being able to see an entertainer at an event that they thought it was a nerd event kind of blew their socks off. So,
yeah.
I'm going to pass on this question, because I think it's so presumptive of what I needed or what I defined at that particular moment. And just because I find it, because I was at PAX 8 Beyond, I thought it was great as well. But each of these conferences service or provide a great service or something, depending upon what it is you're looking for. So what MSP XYZ is going to look for is going to be very different than ABC and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I was at PAX 8 Beyond as well. Congratulations to the team over there with Rob Ray and Jen Bodell and the rest of the group. I think they did a great job for their finally inaugural event. Took them, a little COVID pass there to get them online. To Bob's point, I went to a bunch of events in Europe. I went to obviously a bunch of events here in the US. I know we haven't talked about future events, but next year I'll also be down in APAC, so I'll finally be, triple play there. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of ties. I think, different for different reasons. But I think Right a Boom was a great event this year. I thought PAX 8 Beyond was a great event this year. I thought some of the more community events were great this year. Yeah, there's a lot of good events that I think were tied for many reasons. But and I'm sure we'll get into it. But the size of event isn't necessarily the only criteria.
Yeah, and you know what? I might be biased, but I really think that Can IT-Con was my favorite event this year. It was my first one that hosted, and so incredibly proud of my team. And I know I'll see all of you there this upcoming year. But being up in Canada, it was really great to see Canadian MSPs out, because we don't see them as often as we should down at the events down in the States. I go to a number of events, and I do have to say I agree with Bob that each one serves me with something different and what I need at that time, right? Whether it's the networking, the education, or any parts of that. It just really depends on what I'm looking for right at that moment.
I have to agree. I attended a lot of different events, very different style, from large scale all the way down to niche. But one of probably the better ones that I did was more for what I got out of it as a vendor as well as a learner, was CIC 23, which was probably a very small 50 to 100 person, very focused security conference. And it was really a great learning experience for me and a member of my team. So.
I really enjoyed, and I can feel Paco staring at me here. I really enjoyed both ChannelCon and MSP Unplugged for a couple reasons. The peer groups that are led there really set it apart from a lot of others. And we're not limited to MSP only events. We go to other industry events such as ISSAs and ISACAs around the country. But a lot of, and we can get into this a little bit later, but a lot of the feeling and a lot of the community feel really stood apart for us at those two.
So I hit 44 events this last year, and of those, I would say the ones that stood out the most to me were actually not MSP centric. They were three that really stood out were CompTIA CCF, Communities Councils Forum, mainly because it's helping steer and educate in a different level, and there's no sales pitches allowed there. London Tech Week, because it's so encompassing of enterprise outside of the MSP world and things that should be on our radar that aren't. And B-Sides. Check out your local B-Sides, because there's just great security content out there and some awesome things happening in the colleges.
Joshua, what about you?
Yeah, for me, again, it was PAX 8 Beyond, but also definitely want to give a shout out to Paco. I think for the first time I went to a TechCon Unplugged this past year, and it was really great. I like the smaller scale because you can kind of get real intimate with your peers to really ask serious questions and really start developing those relationships. I met some new people that I hadn't met at any other industry event, because they like to go to the smaller events, and I really like that. You get that different viewpoint, and helps me as well, being a smaller MSP. So that was really a great event too, and there was some great educational content. He really brought in some great speakers, so I definitely got a lot out of it too. So, but for me, it was both. I'd say PAX 8 Beyond and TechCon.
Awesome. So I think Bob made a very good point about, the favorite for me might not be the favorite for you, and each event has its own role. and it depends on where you are in your journey as an MSP or as a vendor, as to where you might go as as the events start to roll out for 2024. Now, I do want, and I'm not going to go around the horn this time because I think this one you're not obligated to answer if you don't want to, but because we did promise to talk about the things that sucked, per Bob's questions that he provided earlier. Anybody can take this question. What are some of the things that make events not be so well, or to put it in Bob vernacular, what makes them suck?
I'll kick that one off. Overgeneralizing and overpromising and overselling whatever the message is, and making sure that AI is mentioned at least 6 times in the first 3 sentences of every. I mean, it's just, and before AI, it was security. Before that, big data or cloud or whatever. You cannot. None of us, none of the vendors, none of the conferences. You cannot be everything. You cannot do everything. You cannot educate. You cannot whatever. Quit pretending to the world like you can, and you do, and you will.
I'll walk out of a room if there is a presenter that is shoehorning a sales pitch into an education session. We've grown beyond that in our industry, and it shouldn't be accepted anymore.
7 o'clock breakfast.
Unless it's PM.
Never PM, Bob. Always AM.
I also think that a lot of the keynotes and speakers are not rotating enough. It's the same faces, same people showing up at every show, and the show producers need to work harder to get some fresh faces and content into that rotation.
And they're also cookie cutter.
Yeah.
I didn't go to my first show till it was Autotask Community Live 2017. And that was when I was heavy into Autotask Datto. One of the things I used to always get was, hey, here's this new greatest thing that we've been working on that's now released. There's so many events now. There's really nothing exciting to talk about from these big vendors throwing these events other than who's the keynote speaker and who's the person that's going to close down the event at the party. And so I used to go expecting to learn more about the products I use in my day-to-day business. And now I feel like I go mainly to network with other MSPs and share stories and help each other out. Basically, it's really a big networking thing for me. And then if you can go to an event that has sessions that are more educational and less, hey, we're trying to teach you why you should buy this product, instead of, hey, let's teach you how to run your business better. Those are the things that I'm really looking for in 2024 is something more educational. We can all do webinars and learn about a product and how cool a product is. And let's face it, we all want to POC things now. We're not just jumping into a 30-day trial and then we're signed up for a year. We got to do a full POC. So the old days of going to these events and getting signed up with 30 different vendors and having it be a sales-driven experience, I feel like is hopefully going away.
But I'll push back on that, Brian, just because it's fun. The group of people here, with the probable exception of me and maybe Brian, are smart, experienced people, whereas I'm just old. And so we've been through that journey. So we're hopefully in the position you're absolutely talking about. But a majority of MSPs and the majority of the audience are not.
That's true.
And to me, we are, this group here, and I'll call us out on this, we are doing this somewhat for social reasons. Okay, there's networking involved, there's collaboration, and there's all that. There's also I want to see everybody, again, except for Brian. I want to see everybody. I want to collaborate, all that kind of fun stuff. But let me twist this message around a little bit. What would you say to the MSP who does not have everything in place, who is facing challenges? How should they approach the question of which shows and all that?
I just want to put one point out there. many people, talking heads, event planners, et cetera, in the industry will tell you that of the 100%, let's just use North America as the geography, of the 100% of IT service providers, managed service providers, put whatever terminology you want to use, available, less than 10% are actually going to one event a year. So that leaves 90% plus as people who never leave the basement, the office, the backseat of their car, whatever they're working, and actually going to an industry event. So that being said, there's a lot of people out there that haven't engaged. And so I think the content regurgitation that you guys are mentioning, like to the net new person. And by the way, for the very big conferences, the ones that are long established and happen all the time, they're seeing about a 50% turnover rate in the attendance year over year of people who didn't attend the year before that are attending the year, this year. So just want to make sure you understand some stats there.
Those are excellent stats. And to shortly answer Bob's question, if I got asked that, some new guy that came to an event, my first question was, well, I got to figure out what OML level you're at. And then I can give you some guidance. Like, where are you at with your team? What do you have in place for processes? What do you not have in place? So I feel like that's the direction, is like, what OML level are you at? That should help determine what you might want to work on next, right?
I think that the events are out there for the smaller MSP.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more of a, especially some of the more community-minded events that are out there, the smaller ones, I think are great for a lot of the emerging, growing MSPs that are hungry for that. But I think at a certain level, and a lot of you on this call are probably at that level where you're going to events and there isn't content necessarily geared for you. It's geared for everyone else that's starting out. And I think that's the part that's missing right now in our industry, is there's nothing that's stretching that top, more mature MSP.
So Henry, looking at it from a vendor standpoint, then, would it be beneficial for especially the vendors hosting large shows, right, where they have a much larger audience and are going to have a much larger span of OML, right? Would it be beneficial to them to have separate tracks for first timers, for OML 1 through 3, and then separate tracks for OML 4 and 5, let's say, just for as an example?
I think that'd be great as long as it's pre-qualified and people are honest when they evaluate themselves.
I think I'm going to use, sorry for using this reference, but I'm going to quote it. The bar rescue butt funnel, like you have to engineer the interactions, right? To your point, right? Like if you don't make sure you understand your audience and quite frankly, generate a little bit of, like a VIP style buzz, right? Like, hey, I'm going to make this an exclusive track. You have to qualify to come to this track. Here's how we qualify you. Like that's something that's not being done. It's whoever runs into the room first and then they tap out and they hit capacity, right? So, to that point, maybe the type of information that we're talking about, to Henry's point, maybe that's the type of stuff that may happen in maybe more of a peer group setting, right? Where people have NDAs and we're talking a little bit more than surface level 30,000 foot overview. And maybe that's the type of stuff that doesn't quite make it into the big event format. Quite frankly, if you look at the big event agendas year over year, it seems like they just Xeroxed it, crossed out the year and put it in the next year.
Yeah,
And I
agreed.
think
I think what your point there, George, too, is that the peer groups really do that, where they have the smaller group and then they qualify their SMEs as to what they might be working on for that quarter or whatever. So it's much more niche, much more smaller scale, grouped more like Henry was saying with OML, like-minded OML people. So the peer groups, have a total different value than the big trade events.
I think that we forget too about the networking aspect sometimes, right? Bob, you mentioned that you go to socialize and, chat with some of those people that you only see at the events and things like that. But there's such a big, important part of that, because that's where I get a lot of my value in talking with the other MSPs and learning what they're using and how they're applying it within their business to help them grow, and then going and having some of those conversations with the vendors. So instead of just going on a show floor and picking somebody, you know, by spinning a wheel of who I'm going to talk to, it's actually vetting it through some other MSPs as well, that you know, you're sitting out around a fire having that conversation with, or meeting some of those other people, that you create those communities yourself too, and have those conversations and just really grow that way as well, to know what else is out there and what I should be looking at. So those smaller MSPs, you know, those are the questions they can be asking. Who should I talk to? What has worked well and what hasn't worked? How can I grow? So being deliberate with some of your questions, but remembering that the networking, while it is the social, it's a hugely important part of the whole thing.
No disagreement. Actually, I still stand to this day, right? I think I went to my very first event in 2001. I'm not trying to age myself. Maybe I didn't cut my hair since then. But that's the best part of every event, to be totally honest with you. The problem is that every time you generate a reason to have that networking vibe without any content or a draw to it, it seems that people don't come for some reason, right? If I create something in your backyard, you just got to jump in the car and drive 30 minutes away from your home. Why don't you come? There's always, it's like, I have an emergency pop up. I'm going to go handle that. Not a big deal. But if you have to plan to leave your place and go somewhere, you're on a trip, you're there, you know what I mean? Like, that's part of the draw. And so I've never been able to see somebody crack that code where it's like, hey, I'm going to give you the networking that you want. I'm going to put the people in the room that you want. But unless there's something else, you seem to just not go. It seems to be interesting, you know, dynamic.
Do you think some of that's from, if I have to go to an event, a conference, a show, whatever it is, it feels like it's acceptable then to go and network, instead of, I'm just going to go to this network event, you know, instead of this place where I was supposed to go, or this commitment. And like, you're tying more of a, what's the word? A deliberate, like, working, learning experience into it, even though really it could be the same thing.
I think part of it is to remember that everybody has different metrics to decide what the engagement level should be, so on and so forth. The vendors, they're fine with you networking as long as it brings them to their booth to have that kind of action. And that makes sense, and they're putting money in to make this thing happen. Similarly, and I want to be very clear, Carrie, I 100% agree with you as far as the networking when there's a point to it.
Agreed.
From the business development standpoint. And I think one of the issues that I think we don't do enough, and I'll even hold myself to the fire on this one, is why am I going? What is my purpose? At the end of the day, how is my organization and myself and my clients' world going to be improved by whatever it is I do? And then how do I accomplish that? And you're never going, because sometimes you discover the goal that you never knew even existed. But at the end of the day, can I say I'm going to go to this conference because I want to work on this issue? To Brian's point, I want to get a better definition of the future process.
Yep.
And I just think there needs to be more of that.
All right.
Yeah, that's got to be hard for the vendor side of things to be able to track the dollar spend to an actual opportunity. That cost has got to be so obscured by the pure number of events that are out there.
It is, but it's doable. I mean, from somebody who has to do it, right? It is doable in Salesforce. And you know, but it's not easy. I do need to kind of stop us here for a second because we are getting close to that 7:30 mark. And so I do need 3 volunteers who are willing to drop off so that we can bring in 3 new guests.
All right. Have a good one, guys. I got to go find a barber. This thing's overgrowing.
George, thank you so much for being here.
You got it, guys. Have a good one.
All right.
I'll hop
I'll
off here as well, Eric.
Okay. So Bob and
I
Henry.
will too.
All right.
Nap time.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Really do appreciate it. All right. So that hopefully the people who were going to come on are now, you know, going to try and connect. So, yep, here we have Kelsey. Hey, Kelsey, welcome back.
Hi. Sorry you had to lose George and Henry and Bob, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, next time we'll know I mean, because originally we had kind of talked about having this as a 2-session opportunity. And there's the man of the hour, the man who started this whole thing.
Someone come in.
Kenny P.
What's happening?
But yeah, next time, we will do this the right way and do 10 at a time, and we'll do 2 nights, and hopefully that'll smooth things out.
The only problem with this is I can't yell at Bob Coppage or George. They're both gone now. So
I know, but
we can only have so many divas in one room, Ken.
Point and counterpoint. Yeah, that's right, Kelsey. But you're the biggest diva of all.
Just because she has her own podcast. I mean, come on.
She has her own podcast, actually.
She actually has her own podcast?
She actually does.
That is part of why we named it that, for sure.
It's a lot of plugging.
How many times can we use the word actually in the rest of the episode tonight?
Actually, I think we could probably actually do that a lot.
I was going to say I'll try to keep count, but now I will not. I refuse.
Yeah, you're already gone. It's already gone.
So actually, as somebody who's run quite a few events over the last several years that are really community type events, Paco, I want to, it's not picking on you because, you know what you're doing. In terms of MSP Unplugged, how many years have you been doing MSP Unplugged now?
So MSP Unplugged, as far as the podcast, that's been around for close to 10 years. The event itself, TechCon Unplugged, will be now the 5th annual in this September.
Okay. And what are some of the things that you guys try and do to make it different, to make it attractive to your core audience?
So I think, carrying on to what we were talking about earlier was why events suck is I think we've got to the point where a lot of events prior to, mine, Carrie having to come out with Can IT, George with MSP Initiative, there was a lot of cookie cutter, rinse and repeat, Xerox of the same events over and over again. And people went to just network. They went to see people. They didn't come for the content. They didn't come for to see the who was there. Maybe there's a vendor that they were looking to speak with because either they want to engage with them more, or maybe speak to someone that had an issue because they invited them to talk to them in person. But there was a lot of that over the last several years where it just was you were going to see your people. You were going to go see the Henrys of the world, the Kelseys, the Kenny P's. We were going to see them and hallway conversation. That's my tagline that I always make fun of is where the magic happens, right? And so, when we created our event, at least back in 2019, at the time, emerging MSPs weren't really giving a lot of notice, and they weren't given a lot of opportunities to do what they needed to do. We actually attended a big event, and there was a session where there was a panel they snubbed solo business owners and emerging MSPs and identifying them for the fly-by-night guys and the gals. So, it got to a point where we decided to come with this event. And then what it evolved into is a true, really community event, right? And I think all of us can agree that community is really the way that you have to move forward with this. It has to be community, it has to be education. And so understanding who are the partners for that, which MSPs are willing to come and share and ask for help. I think that's the biggest piece, that a lot of people don't come to these events because they're shy and they don't feel comfortable asking for help. And you have to kind of encourage them, and hopefully they'll kind of come in that route. But at the same time, it's with the vendors as well. Especially like, dealing with Shield Cyber, you're an emerging a vendor as well for the last couple of years, and trying to get that footing. And like, how do we expose you guys to let you know that, hey, they are solid partners? How do we vet them? How is it a two-way street where it's our business we're trying to benefit from, but how do we help support your business because of great people like yourself? So it's a lot of those type of things where we try to formulate in the event. We are reimagining some of that in the next year that we'll announce here next week. But as far as that event, that's kind of where the mission has come into play. It's really, you got to focus on the community piece, because it's not until you have everybody come together where you really feel and see a lot of the things that need to be resolved or at least helped with. I don't know, Carrie, if you felt the same way with, I know you went and did that for the Canadian MSPs as well.
Yeah, and like for us, really, it's about bringing that community together, right? Giving them a place where they can come and they can share and they can learn, and that we can all grow together instead of holding our cards so close that, you know, nobody else can see. If we just pulled them out just a touch and shared with each other, we would all grow a lot. We wouldn't all go through such the tribulations we have to grow our MSPs, right? And you know, you don't have to share some of that information, but there is so much value in being vulnerable, and you know, just letting yourself communicate with those around you and growing. And I really feel like it's lacking in the Canadian market specifically. Like I said, I don't see a lot of Canadians that go. There are definitely Canadians that go, but not very many that go down to the States. And when we asked our audience on day one who's been to an event before, the amount of hands that went up was not many. When we asked how many had been to a large event, there really was even less. So they're not getting out. So how do we create that community a little bit closer to home so that people can grow and share together as opposed to trying to do it all themselves?
Yeah, and I think community has a lot to do with why TechCon has emerged, why Can IT has emerged, why Community Minds emerged this last year, is that they're giving us something that the bigger vendor-led shows don't in terms of community, right? Now, now that we have all three of our new guests back, I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. So, Kelsey, go ahead first, and then Kenny, and then JP.
All right. Hello. Yes, my name is Kelsey. I am on the vendor side of the world over here. I am with CyberQP, coming up on 2 years. I have done probably 75 events in my career in the space, and so I have lots of thoughts and opinions, and I'm very happy to be here.
Kenny P.
Oh, I was going to let JP go first. JP,
No, you, my friend, you.
You're going to be like Chippendale. No, you. No. Well, see, this is what community is all about. I'm Ken Patterson. I think most of you know. Carrie, I don't think I've met you before, but I'm sure I will sometime soon. I was an MSP for 20 plus years before joining the dark side, and when I went to PAX 8 and grew their community to a pretty significant level over the 4 years I was at PAX 8, and then now I'm at Taylor Business Group doing the same, trying to grow not only Taylor Business Group's community, but I think most of you all know I'm all about our community as a whole. It has nothing. It's not about me. It's not about Taylor Business Group. It's about our community. It's about us. It's not about me. It's just that's the way I'm driven. Ever since I left being an MSP, I still consider myself an MSP, and there's a lot of improvement that we need to make to help MSPs get to the next level.
Boy, well said, sir. It's hard to follow that. JP Kesey with F1 Information Technologies, F1 IT for short. We're out of Fort Worth, Texas, and just a normal MSP trying to navigate all of this. We've been in business for about 20 years. We're about 20 engineer team strong, and that's us.
All right. So right before we had to kind of swap out some guests here, which we'll figure this thing out eventually. Bob had started this kind of line of questioning around what MSPs should be looking for in a show. And so I kind of want to spend a little more time on that. I think there really is. There's room for a checklist almost of what MSPs should be looking for in different types of shows. So, and I know a lot of people have experience in this who are in the room right now still. What are some of the things that MSPs should consider as their reasons for going to a show? And what does success kind of look like in terms of that? Does
Eric,
that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think Brian made a good point. I know I'm going to actually agree that Brian made a good point. See, I'm filling in for Bob quite well. Brian made a great point about the OML level, and then Bob came back and made the comment of every MSP is different. What one MSP finds, and the strange thing about this is most MSPs don't know what that is. And I think if we could all help them out, it would be to say, to find those things out. What is it that you're looking for? Is your team all together and in place, and your team is in a good spot? Is your stack in the right place? Is all the different pieces? What is it that you're going to an event for? Now, of course, being a community guy and meeting most, if not all of you at an event and becoming close friends because of that, the main thing, as Carrie alluded to earlier, is that community connection with the other MSPs and I built my MSP off of everybody else's backs. I'm just a big stealer. I stole a lot of crap from, getting information from other MSPs who basically, smacked me and said, hey, haven't you tried this before? And I went out and did those things and tried those things. So from that standpoint, it's yes, you want to tell them to go out to events where they can meet other MSPs. And I strongly suggest that they go and meet people they've never met before and start introducing themselves and getting into groups. For all of the MSPs that are more mature and out there, I strongly recommend that you all take a new MSP in the space, someone that you don't know, and bring them into the group and have a conversation. Some of the MSPs in this very call, and probably some of the ones that we're close to, started because we used to have group meetings at events. And every time we went to an event, we grabbed someone new and looked like they were shy and looked like they were having a hard time and pulled them into our group and had conversations. So that's a big thing from an MSP perspective, is all MSPs should be looking to help someone who's willing to learn. We know there are MSPs out there that are there just for the swag, as Mara posted in the thing, right?
Yep. Now, so there's several MSPs on the call and some ex-MSPs like myself, like Kenny. And, I know Paco's been into, so everybody who's been an MSP, just really quick, if we can, go through something that leveled up your business when you went to that first event.
I'll go. I'll jump in real quick because, one of the first events I ever went to was one of the channel company exchange events. And I got invited by another MSP saying, hey, you should go attend this. I think you'll get something out of it. And to kind of reiterate what Kenny P was saying, Kenny, it's not necessarily robbing and duplicating like Brian was saying, but it's mentorship.
Yep.
I think that you can look at it in a couple of different ways. And if you are a mature enough of a person, period, whether you're the visionary or the integrator inside of your business, that you are intentionally humble to be able to look and listen to what other MSPs or vendors are saying to you as an opportunity that they're mentoring to you. That's kind of where I've gained my success from. Like what Kenny P was saying was I was using those opportunities at those events, whether it was a sales pitch, whether it was another MSP at the bar, but getting good questions to ask. And I think that might be the checklist that we all need to start building is, here's a question that you should be asking anybody that's willing to mentor to you or to talk to you about this. Ask this question. And it could be as simple as, hey, what are you using for MFA? How are you implementing it? Just any of those questions like that around anywhere in any one of these events, you're going to get some really golden nuggets, as Kenny P has said for a long time. You're going to get those golden nuggets that will raise your level up.
Yeah, I'll jump in. My first public event wasn't until 2017. Started my MSP in 2005. So I was kind of on an island for quite a long time. And I would say going to my first event, it made me realize I don't have to be on an island. And it also opened me up to more accountability to help understand what I should be doing next as a business owner, because my team doesn't always know what I should be doing next. And my wife handles the finances. She can tell me how the numbers are, but as a CEO visionary, right? Who can I have discussions with to understand, what are other people trying out and what are the other trends? And I would say peer groups, huge, right? And understand you're probably going to outgrow a peer group. You're going to start out with a peer group that's at a certain OML level. And if you outpace them in growth, you're going to want to move to another peer group that's a little more mature. But peer groups, to me, allow you to continue the discussions that you tend to have at the events with peers that you can trust and be open with. And so I wonder if there also shouldn't be a journey of, hey, if I'm going to start going to events, I also want to be a part of a peer group that I can share what I learned from these events, and that hopefully events they're going to that I'm not going to, they can also share with me as well.
There's a lot of examples, Eric, of what this community has done for itself, for its people, right? And you look at, I mean, sorry, Kelsey, you're on the call and you talked about being 2 years here and working at CyberQP, but I mean, just in general, if you want a good example of what the community can do, just look at Kelsey, someone who actually is willing to learn and say and be open to, hey, what am I doing wrong? How do I fix myself? What do I do to improve and get better in different areas? She's a prime example. This is somebody who's completely went from, hey, I'm starting out here, I'm learning, but was open to people saying to her, hey, Kelsey, you know what? Maybe you should try this, or maybe you should try that. And I'll tell you what, I haven't seen anybody grow faster and adapt quicker than Kelsey has. So to me, that she's the epitome of what this channel can do for you, because if you're willing to learn, it doesn't work if you're not willing to learn, and you want to open yourself up. If you open yourself up to this community and you're willing to learn, you'll explode. And then on the MSP side, Paco, I'm sorry, but I've known you since the since the early days, and man, how you've grown. I mean, yeah, you were doing the podcast for a long time, but your MSP and the thing, what you bring to the channel, man, it does my heart good. Seriously, I could break up right now talking about like you guys in our group that have just completely exploded by being a part of the channel and opening up and not saying, no, man, you're wrong. I'm doing this. I got it. I'm doing this right. You can't be that way. That's the first step. Like you said, you got to be able to be open and be held accountable. And to me, we have great examples right here on the call of people that have just, expanded because they were willing to learn.
Yeah, well, Brian touched on you don't have to be an island, right? And so many of us, number one, because we're just made the way we're made, we're introverted, right? So getting off the island is hard to start with, but events will definitely pull you out of your shell. So that's a good thing. But there's also, there's this scarcity versus abundance mentality, right? And you're kind of taught in traditional world viewpoint about scarcity in business and competition and all of that. And it's the exact opposite, I feel, in this industry. In this industry, we have true abundance. There are so many small to medium-sized businesses out there that need to be serviced by a managed IT services provider that we don't have to worry about competition almost ever. And so I think, it's just a great point to bring up that you don't have to be an island. Like JP said, there are mentorship opportunities. And I think a big part of the checklist, JP hit it. It's bringing the right questions to the show so that when you are networking, that you actually get the answers that you planned on getting to bring back to actually make it have an effect on your business.
Yeah,
but
getting
even
back to
I'll even take that a further.
Good. JP or Paco?
Go ahead, Paco.
I'll let JP go. Okay.
So what I was gonna
I was going to say to take that further. Oh, go ahead. My bad. No.
Nope. It's you now. There's a delay.
To take it further. The way that it was to go further, what you said, Eric, is the fact that yes, they have to come with the right questions, but I think oftentimes those that have come out of their shell and come to the events, they discover the abundance. The second phase that they're getting over, and that's, I think, the responsibility for us that have been in their shoes to quote unquote send the elevator down, is how do we be specifically tangible to that MSP that's growing? Meaning, how do we get specific to ask those specific questions, like acronyms and abbreviations that we assume everyone will know, being able to explain those, being able to tell someone, hey, when I was in your position, I did these 3 specific things, and this is what helped me grow, things of that nature. And what really helped me in this piece was finding those people that you can mirror yourself to and them being open to be specific towards you. I think that's such a huge piece for those that sometimes, and I've had MSPs come to me saying, look, I know I need to ask you, how did you do it? But I don't even know the questions to ask you. And so I think that's where it's a huge piece to be able to say, all right, that's where we need to go in, ask those specific questions and help them understand, hey, I think you're looking for this because I'm experienced enough to know if I can provide you the tangible reason why, hopefully that should help you a little bit further than giving them the generic, what you hear on stage of do these 10 things and you'll be, it'll help you specifically. But they don't get to the T or as specific as you're looking for that MSP that's looking for it.
I want to add to that very specifically. So the reason I even said what I did was I went through a business coaching similar to what Taylor Business Group is. And early on, before any of that kind of stuff I knew even existed, it was actually a client of ours. And so one of the things off of a 2-year program that they had at the very last meeting, they challenged everyone in the group to find someone in your industry that was smaller than you, whether it was in the same city or same region, or if it was somewhere else because you went to certain events or you just knew somebody, and offer to mentor to them, to teach them what you just learned over those 2 years. I don't think that's a bad idea for any of us to do inside of our own regions or whatnot. Just like you said, Eric, there's plenty of business, and it created opportunities for us that has helped us a lot. One was, if that person realizes that they were having an entrepreneurial seizure, as Simon Sinek says, and says, hey, this just isn't for me, well, maybe they want to come work with you, and if not, you've also helped someone, and it keeps you fresh. The teacher's always the one who learns more. But those are the type of things that you can get people to go to these events and give them certain questions that you ask. And I don't know that it's just the questions that you ask. I think the vendors, as they become more attuned to this educational piece that we're all, starving to have, to bring our teams to, I think that allows for questions that they get to take back to their teams that will raise their operational maturity level as well. And so I think that's a good way to if you come away with questions, that you can value that event that way as well.
Hey, JP, just as we were going on to the whole MSP rant, Dylan posted in the text something important. The vendors need to do this as well. They need to, they need to mentor. They need to bring people up. They need to bring other vendors up and help other vendors. And you're right. It doesn't happen enough, Dylan. I agree. And I've only been on this side of the fence for, 5 years or so. But when you mentioned that, Dylan, it kind of sparked something, because earlier we were talking about, and Carrie brought it up too, about these people that don't go to the shows, right? And for whatever number of reasons, they don't go to the shows. Years ago, there was a certain cliquey attitude at some of these shows where some MSPs will go there and they'll notice there's a group of MSPs, but they don't pull them in. And they know maybe they're not doing it intentionally. It's not like, which is why Tech Degenerates is such a cool thing that's breaking out, right? That's a whole different breaking the mold type of thing. So I love Henry and the whole team for that, JP. This is something that I wonder, is that still happening? And is there a way to break that off? And then also the flip side, the vendors need to do a better job of just getting to know the actual people that they're trying to do whatever they do, and actually listen to what they say. Thank you, Joshua. I feel like if that's actually, if we could get both sides to do a little bit more in this case, we could do, that small percentage of people that are coming to events may hear, hey, I went to my first event and it was so welcoming. I felt so comfortable there. I didn't feel like I was stressed, and I couldn't ask a question because someone was going to stomp me because I'm not mature enough, things like that. And the vendor side definitely needs to work on it, because I don't think, first of all, if they ask questions of the people they're actually trying to get to buy their solution, they might actually learn what they're looking for, as opposed to trying to sell them the wrong way, which is what keeps happening.
Yeah, to jump in there, we've hit on, hey, community MSPs learning from one another, but I've seen and talked to so many vendors out there. They're like, I asked them, hey, how was X event that you went to? They're like, oh, that sucked. I didn't generate any leads from that. I'm like, well, how'd you approach that event? They're like, Well, as George mentioned earlier, I got up and had breakfast at 7 in the morning, and I sat at my booth all day working from my laptop. Didn't go to a single session. I had one drink at a happy hour. I talked to my coworker that was there, and then I went back to my hotel room. It's like, and that's one of my big gripes with the vendor space, and the way that I see a lot operate is they don't actually get ingrained in the community and almost put themselves in their partner's shoes. They're so hyper focused on, hey, what am I doing here at Shield Cyber? This is the only thing that matters. It's like you are one of 75 vendors that your MSP has to worry about.
It's like groupthink, right? I mean, the issue I have with vendors is that they should be setting best practices for us, and they aren't. They're just watching that mailbox money coming in and making sure that the people that come to their events have smiles on their faces. They should really be leading the charge with RBAC, enterprise security, all these things that need to come out of the box with their products now, where the MSPs aren't even asking the questions. That's the other problem. Their partner base isn't even asking for that, even though it should come out of the box with it. And so it's like this groupthink from these MSP channel vendors that feel like I don't have to be like an enterprise vendor and check all these boxes that enterprise vendors have to check, because the MSP community isn't asking for that. So I only have to give them what they're asking for to keep them happy, rather than tell them, no, you're doing it wrong, and this is the way you should do it. Microsoft, too, put the MFA in forever, because they were worried about customers getting mad and not using their products. They said, why do we want to do that? And now they're finally doing it, right?
Yeah, there's a fine balance there, though, between only delivering what they're asking for, right? Yeah. Henry Ford's Model T, quote, and going full enterprise. Because, as a vendor and having been an MSP, I don't think most MSPs want to be sold to like enterprise is sold to.
Correct.
I think there is an in between, right? I think a lot of MSPs are not mature enough to know what they want and ask for it. And so I think there is a responsibility on the vendor's part to go above and beyond what they're asking for, because a lot of us, have been there. And so we know better. And so we know what they should be looking at, AKA those best practices you were talking about, Brian. Now,
go
ahead.
So how about, the vendors are in a perfect position to do matchmaking, going back to that mentorship piece of it. Kenny P's done this for a very long time. And Eric, I know you have as well, is, when they see, or they're able to convince an MSP, maybe it's a very young MSP, small, whatever the case may be, get them to come to one of the events. All you got to do is ask some of us MSPs that are there to say, hey, how about you come talk to this guy? Let me bring this guy to this dinner that we're going to go to. How about around this bar? We're going to sit here and we're going to talk about a few things. And then we all as a community come together with some questions that we should be asking them, just softball questions. Let them get used to it for one or two events, and then we can get into the whole mentorship piece of it.
Yep, 100%. And you're right.
I think there's also some other drivers that.
Go ahead, Pete.
Pete, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think there's some other drivers from the vendors that need to change also to make it a little more successful for the attendees, whether it's MSPs or even a conglomerate of, because some of these now are blended events, right? We've got some industry and MSPs really getting mixed up, like the Threat Locker events and things of that nature. But I think the vendors have to go in with a different persona of the finance people are driving what they really are there to do, right? How many people, how many leads, how many this, what is the cost? It's driven purely. So they're driven to say, this is who I have to take out. I have to take out a certain partner, instead of saying, let me get one or two of my top partners and then let me go get a bunch of prospects and pull them in. And, you probably end up with a better ROI that way than you're going to get continuing to schmooze just your regular partner base, because you're pulling them along. But that shift in that back end side of the vendors has got to change too before they go to a show. And then I think the vendors will drive or will have an ability to drive some different behavior.
Well, maybe we all have a brainstorming
So
session to
I want
figure
to
out
say
how
something
to
probably.
tell how to help create those KPIs or those measurable goals to what the community is doing in that aspect, Pete. I think that's a piece that the vendors, I think, have a challenge with is they do certain things that's not necessarily lead generating. I understand that's an easy, low-hanging KPI for the vendors to be able to say, hey, this was a successful event because of this. But how do you know that 3 years of working on a particular MSP at just a little bit of, hey, I'm going to buy him one drink here. Hey, we're going to go have this conversation there. Hey, let me make this introduction to this other MSP. And all of a sudden, I've gained a relationship with, a vendor that I'm like, I've got to do something for them. I just feel like I have to do something.
You hit it on the head. You can't put ROI on an event, on one single event. If you're going to do it, you have to plan it out, and it's events. It's these events strung out. And that's what kills me when people say, oh, I don't want to go to the same event. It has the same MSPs. What are you, crazy? It has the same people. That's what you want. You want to be able to see them here, see them there, and you're not drilling them with sales crap. You're actually building a relationship, just like anything else. You're building a relationship. Then you're building trust.
I've gone to the same events multiple times year after year and hear the same, whatever you want to call it, pitch or whatever. And it's the one person that says it in a different way that I hear it differently. And I go, I need that. I've got to have that. And so it's like getting in a group of a circle. And some of you have heard me say this before. If I tell a story, the next person is going to tell it differently by the time it gets back to me. So I'm okay with all of these events. I think it's okay that we look at the events, y'all were talking about earlier before I got on, that, how do you know which events to go to? Go to as many as you can, because you're going to hear something a little bit differently. You guys, the vendors, are going to get better at presenting and educating, that we're going to hear it a little bit differently. And I think also if you send some of your team to these events as well, they're going to hear it differently, come back and tell you something a little different in a different way that you've never heard.
Yep.
So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Paco, you had something, and then I think we probably need to wrap it up because we want to be respectful of Marvin B's live stream as well. So go ahead, Paco.
Marvin will be all right. No, the only thing I was going to say was optimistically, and maybe a little bit off from the way I say it, is I'm actually optimistic on that vendors are slowly starting to get it, and the vendor landscape is actually going to change. And the reason why I say that is because there are more vendors now that have either been started by MSPs or understand how pivotal the MSP market is, like CyberQP, Shield Cyber, and those that they've completely changed their trajectory and have former MSPs steering the way, like companies like that they've hired former MSPs like Huntress and SuperOps, and really understanding that the voice of the MSP is now starting to get blended. And I think that we're getting to a point where the legacy vendors either need to figure it out or they need to get out of the way. And I think we're in a point now that I think they're starting to get that. And the hope is once they start getting it, it will start to bleed in and start leaning toward in the event space, and hopefully driving what we truly are asking for is that sense of community, the sense of belonging, and also being able to have that sense of community.
Awesome.
I love you, Paco.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. I really do appreciate it. Now, one of the things that obviously has happened tonight is that we hit the restriction of 10 guests at a time. So next time we're going to have to do, we'll limit it at 9 guests because it's plus me. But there were so many great topics uncovered tonight, both in the first half and the second half. Kelsey, you brought up some good points in the private chat that I think deserve to be, dived into a little bit deeper. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, we'll carry on the conversation behind the scenes. I will respond to the email thread and we'll all get talking on maybe, and I'll list some of the topics that came out tonight. and we can start going through them and see who's interested in coming back in a couple of weeks, maybe a month, and doing this again. I think for me, two of the big takeaways, because I just love community in this way, is that number one, all of us who have been to shows and understand how it affects our business as an MSP should be encouraging our peers to do the same, to at least pick one show and go to it this year. And then those of us who go to the shows, MSPs and vendors alike, should be looking for those people who it's their first show and pulling them in, pulling them alongside, and helping them navigate that first show. So I really appreciate everybody being here tonight. Again, I do like to respect Marvin B's time. So if you have a chance and you have the time, go ahead and check out his live stream over on, you can find it on LinkedIn, YouTube, all the different things. So again, thank you guys very much for being here, and we'll see you in the next one. Have a great
Thanks for
evening.
putting it
Thanks
together.
for having us, Eric.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.